Hello and welcome to my podcast, Used to Be's Do Count, with me, Dean James. You're listening to episode number 10, I Used to Be a Dancer. In this episode, I speak with Colin Ross Waterson, one of the original swans from Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake.
That little show that we did for a fortnight at Sadler's Wells, because that's all it was. The contract was for 2 weeks, a 2-week run. I don't think anyone could have predicted the degree of the success. It became the longest running dance show of all time, like anywhere.
Colin is now a successful musician, vocalist, composer, and lyricist. And we speak about the successful transition from professional dancer to professional musician.
You're very much in the moment as a dancer, and you're very much in the moment as a musician. It's like time just sort of stops or dissolves or collapses or something like that. If you've trained even for a term as a dancer, you never forget that those are the components necessary to be a dancer.
Without further ado, let's dive right in. Colin Ross Waterson, thank you so much. I'm so excited that you're here and I'm so excited to talk to you today. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me and join my podcast.
You're welcome. I'm excited too.
Yeah, so if anyone doesn't know who you are Colin Ross Waterson. You are a composer, you are a lyricist, you're based in Glasgow.
Yeah.
You've done lots of things with your music. I feel like you are very eclectic in what you do and what you compose and what you get involved with. Some of the things that people have said about your music, I mean, Scotland's queer music sensation by the wonderful Alan Cumming, who I tend to think about on a daily basis, like be more like Alan Cumming.
We could all do with being more Alan Cumming, yeah.
Really good. He's incredible.
He's a good egg.
He's a good egg. And
he's a really good egg, that one.
Yeah. I mean, the BBC themselves have said that your music will make us feel like we really believe in true love and heartbreak, which is fantastic. Lorraine McIntosh, Deacon Blue fame, special kind of songwriting talent that you are. We're going to talk about all of the wonderful things that you're doing as a composer and all of the brilliant accolades that you've got to your name. However, we do want to focus, as you know, most of the conversation on your used to be. So tell us, please, what your used to be was.
Well, I was a dancer. I was a contemporary dancer, but all kinds of dancing.
All kinds of dancing, mainly contemporary dancing. So you used to be a dancer. You're doing so well in what you're doing. And I really want to explore all of the beautiful things that dance brought to your life and how you've taken that forward. So if you wouldn't mind, Colin, if you can just let me know, when did you start dancing?
I was a teenager. I wasn't young. In Clydebank, where I grew up, and there was a phenomenal teacher called Betty Stewart who, she was a local teacher. She put us through the exams, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, what styles do you do?
Ballet, tap, modern.
Wonderful.
No contemporary, but at that point when I first started, it was the classics.
The classics, and you were going through all of your exams and all of that stuff that you do as a kid.
All that kind of stuff. But she used to put on these amazing shows every year, every summer. He would do, a dancing display, it used to be called. And I don't even know how she did it. Like looking back and going through being a professional, I'm like, this local teacher, she was just her on her own. She used to choreograph probably 30 numbers in this show.
Wow.
And they were brilliant. She was a brilliant teacher. So that was my start with that. I started my music training as a child. So I was doing music already by that point. I started violin at 6 and piano at 8. But by the time I got to be a teenager, I wanted to go down the dance route as well as that.
Okay, nice. So you started your music career around 6 and 8. You said a teenager, early teens or late teens?
Yeah, like 12, 11, 12, something like that. Yeah,
12. And what interested you in dance at that age?
I was already doing musicals as a child, did a lot of musical theatre as a child before I even went to train. And I was often in the sort of the children-led shows, you know, like adult amateur dramatics companies or touring companies, youth theatre, that kind of thing. So this dance teacher, Betty Stewart, she was involved in a couple of the leading amateur groups in Glasgow. There was one called the Minerva and there was one called the Pantheon. So that's how I got introduced to her. And she was well known in Cloudbank and in Glasgow, in Scotland probably. And that's how I got into it. I kind of got more interested in the dance side of the musicals. And so it wasn't music that I was covering as a pianist and violin. That was classical music. And the most modern my piano teacher got was Gershwin. You know, like that was like, oh my God, Gershwin. It was usually like Beethoven and Bach, which I love and I loved and I still love, but it was very traditional, put it that way. So the musical theatre that I was doing, I was like, oh, what is this world? This is cool. You know, there's something to this that really connects. I wonder, and like this avenue and this bit. So dance was obviously, you know, a key part to musical theatre. That's why I eventually went.
Wonderful. Is Betty Stewart still with us?
She's not, unfortunately, no.
Okay, well, I just love that you've said her name, and, you know, I have my own experience of this, being a child of musical theatre and performing arts and stuff, and those key staples of the community, people like her who are everyday heroes, you know, just passionate about musical theatre, about performing arts, about dance and about training, and then gives kids like you the opportunity to access that from these local places.
It's amazing. It's not to be underestimated because it still goes on up and down the country. There are all these amazing, like, local dance teachers, local musical theatre teachers, and they're giving people this life, you know, even if you don't go into it as a profession, in terms of expression and connection and community, it's amazing. She was one in a million. She actually learned, like, most of my education in musical theatre was probably from her, because she had all the double album, all the original cast recordings, and she was really into Bob Fosse, and she was really into Michael Bennett. She loved Kander and Ebb, you know, and she used to play all this amazing music she had the latest cast recordings, you know. So I was just lapping all that up because I wasn't getting that in traditional music training. You know, that was her really.
Yeah, wonderful. I love that. And, you know, what she did and how she inspired you lives on today. And like you said, these people still exist up and down the country.
Yeah.
They can really open people's eyes to a much wider world than what environment they might be living in. Art does that, especially performance art.
Totally.
You know, yeah, wow. She sounds like an absolute legend.
I absolutely loved her.
And then how about school, Colin? How about your traditional sort of Monday to Friday?
Yeah, school and me, I mean, not so much.
Okay, so it was a bit of a tough time at school. You wasn't really doing much dance or performance there, or?
No. Funnily enough, my primary school, I went to Golden Hill Primary School, and there it was very church oriented, which was great because of the music. You know, love or loathe the church. You know, that's one great thing was the music and the community and all that kind of stuff. So we used to have a lot of music, and a lot of the teachers played instruments and sang and all that kind of stuff. So that was brilliant. We all took part in that. Clydebank High, when I went there, I did do my music O-level and higher level. I think it was standard grade and higher level. Like, I did it, but I don't know. It just, the school environment, I think, was the thing that didn't really suit me, because I really wasn't interested in anything else, you know, and I scraped through all those kind of academic exams without really paying too much attention. But I had all the other stuff going on, you know, after school every night, at the weekends. I was in choirs, I was doing the musicals, I was in drama club, I was in dance lessons, piano. That was always my life more than school.
Yeah, so I guess you were really just looking to get through and finish school so you could get to doing that full time.
Yeah. Exactly.
And did that become full-time? How did that happen?
Yeah, as soon as I was 16, I was allowed to leave school, and they drove me to the careers development office. They were like, you do realise you have to attend school every day, Colin? I was like, no, I didn't know that. I'm so sorry.
Here you come, grand jetting down the road to the career development.
Exactly. I mean, I'm off choreographing my future. I didn't realise. They drove me to the careers development. I left school, my mum said, well, you can only leave school if you get a full-time job. So I got a full-time job, and then I had auditioned for London Studio Centre when I was 15, believe it or not.
Wow. Okay.
And I'd got in, so I knew that that's what I was doing and that's where I was going. They did allow me to sit my hires, just 2 hires, English and music, got them somehow without being there. And then went to London Studio Centre.
At 16, you went to London Studio Centre?
Yeah, at 16. And I started working as well, like about 12, 13. I'd started working in the profession. So my first ever dance job was about, I think I was 12, maybe 13, doing Death in Venice at the Theatre Royal, Scottish Opera. And I started doing commercial work like posters and, adverts and stuff like that. So this is what I mean. I was sort of single track mind. I thought, well, I've got an agent. I'm already working. I'm doing all these musicals. I'm in Scottish Youth Theatre and I've got a place at college. Who needs school?
Who needs school? There's only one way this is going and no one's going to tell you any different. No. Totally understand.
Yeah. You get it.
Great, because there's so many kids out there that don't know what to do, and that's fine. Some people are still figuring that out later on in life. But when you are a true sort of person of the theatre or a performer, or that's in your bones, in your blood, in your passion, I was very much like this as a kid as well. There was only one way it was going. There was never any other possibility of anything else. It's not like I didn't have any other interests. I did, but I knew I was going to perform. I was going to study dance. That was what it was going to be. So you went down to London Studio Centre at 16 years old. So that was a big move for you. You were in Clydebank. You were 16 years old. And you went down on your own. You were coming away from your family, your friends, your support system. Big new city. How was that?
Yeah, well, I loved it. I mean, it was a great time. I'll just set the scene. It was the summer of 1990. And in the summer of 1990, there was the period following Acid House and that whole explosion of house music and early hip hop and club cultures, all that kind of stuff was really coming to fruition. And so it was an amazing time to get to London because it was just after those summers of love, So the vibe was really cool, really interesting. You could live quite cheaply compared to now. You could live really, really cheaply. And again, Mum and Dad were like, if you want to go to London at 16, you have to get a job. So I got a job at the Adelphi Theatre, selling ice creams and tearing tickets. That was my job throughout the whole of college. And yeah, I just loved it. It was like, that whole thing people say you have to find your tribe in life. Well, I found my tribe at London Studio Centre. That little nucleus of friends who I am still friends with to this day. And there's quite a few of them who we're really good friends still. It's amazing. I absolutely loved it.
It's a great college. It's so renowned for its incredible training and there's such incredible alumni. And it's so nice to know that you went there 1990, early 90s, and that you all still connect and talk now and stay in touch. That is incredible. And I bet they're all buying in what they're doing as well, right?
Yeah. Well, Daniel Crossley, who's in A Second Chance, he was, the most amazing dancer. He's so talented. We see each other all the time. Anytime I'm in London, always see each other and we're working together again. Michelle Blair, she's a big agent. There's loads of people. Ellen Kane, choreographer. Don't see Ellen actually, but I am in touch with her online. She's one of the kind of satellite, that sort of online world. But yeah, Michelle I saw recently, Kevin Mathurin, who's in Emmerdale at the moment, saw him recently. There's loads of people that you could reel off, literally still friends with these people. It's just, it's so lovely.
I think there's a thing about, and anyone listening that has been to a performance college or studied performing arts will know the closeness that you form with your peers during that process. Was it a 3-year course?
Yeah, it was 3 years. And then I did a 4th year just before they brought in the degree programs. So that was before there was such a thing as a BA and a, But in preparing for that, I believe this is the story anyway, they started doing graduate years. So we were actually in the very first year of the graduation contemporary company in total. So that was there was a ballet company, there was contemporary, there was a musical, I think, and there might have been an acting company as well. And that's what you do in your last year at Studio Centre if you're on the degree programme, and they assess you as a professional member of this rep company, touring company, what have you. Daniel and I both did the first year of in total, so we stayed on for an extra year.
Wonderful. And what did you do? Did you do the contemporary dance?
Did the contemporary dance. Yeah, that was amazing. You know, we got to work with Siobhan Davis, Richard Alston, Mark Baldwin, people like that at that time. You were essentially still at college, but you were having this amazing professional experience, doing class every morning, then rehearsing, then going out touring. I mean, it's a gem of an idea, and they still do it.
Wow. I mean, that is such incredible training, really, to say that the final year is really trying to mirror the professional world out there is a preparation, not only in your physical training, but training to how you're going to be in the world, how you're going to navigate life through this professional world.
You just had that experience before you had the experience, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Just that preparation, that glimpse, you know, just that little glimpse into that world. It was brilliant. Such a good idea.
Yeah, wonderful. And so you did that final year. How did your career sort of develop after that? Was it an easy ride? Did you come out and find it straight away, or was it tough? How did you find it?
Well, for me, it was pretty straightforward. I think it was a very magical time for contemporary dance. I do believe that. You know, late 80s, early 90s, there was just seemed to be loads going on. You know, you had the Chumleys and the Fanshaws, you know, Lee Anderson's amazing choreography. You had Bunty Matthias Company, whom I also danced with Bunty. And it was just all this mad stuff going on. And people just seemed to like, I'm putting on a show. I'm just going to do it. You know, people just seem to put shows on.
Yeah, a simpler time to do that, I guess.
It was a simpler time, you know, it really, really was. So I left college. My first full-time contract was with Bill Deemer. He's a choreographer and director. He just did Hello Dolly at the London Palladium with Imelda Stoney. He's amazing choreographer, beautiful person. And I believe, I might be wrong, if he's listening to this, he might correct me, but I think that was his first job, was my first full-time contract, was his first choreography job, but I could be wrong.
Wow. And after that, Colin, he was ready for anything.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that I made his career, but you know, no, it had absolutely nothing to do with that. But he was brilliant. It was a great job. We traveled Asia. We were dancing for like Asian pop stars, basically, the sort of Madonna and Michael Jackson of Asia, believe it or not. That was the job, and it was great.
Wow. So this was more than contemporary dance. This was backing dancing.
Well, see, that wasn't really contemporary dance, funnily enough. I know. So I did my contemporary company at Studio Centre, and then I got a commercial job.
Yeah, but you know, it's interesting. It's similar for lots of people because it's where sometimes the work is, it's where the money is.
Yeah.
You get to tour and travel the world being a commercial dancer, even though you've got all of this contemporary training. But this is what makes the world go round. This, you know, eclectic way of dancing. You know, if you're a dancer, you're a dancer.
Yeah. Well, this is it. And I think that is the good thing about Studio Centre, where you did do everything. You know, you had a palette, if you will, of styles. Some, obviously, you know, you're going to take to more than others, going to have strengths and weaknesses, but you are, you know, theoretically capable of doing more or less anything, you know. I could never have been a classical ballet dancer, that's for sure. But all the rest of it, you know, meant I was able for that audition, and that was my first job, and I absolutely loved it. And then when I came back in so that'd be the following summer, and the artistic director of In Toto, the head of the year, Sue Booker, another amazing teacher and a mentor. She was like a mother, a sister, you know, a best friend, but like the best teacher who demanded and commanded their respect. We were in awe. Like, we were in awe of this woman. She was amazing. I went in to see her at college. I think I was like doing some free classes, you know, up the back. They used to let you do that. I don't know if they would now. And she goes, "Have you seen this week's stage?" And I'm like, "No, not yet." Like, look in there. There's an advert for Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake. He's doing a new version of Swan Lake. He's looking for swans. Now, back in the day, it must have been third year, he and Icky Mass, the other teacher, they took us to see Matthew Bourne's very, very small company. It was like maybe 5 or 6 people at that time. And they did this amazing Hitchcockian sort of ballet called Deadly Serious. They don't do it anymore, but it was amazing. And I remember I said to Sue, I said, that's what I want to do. That's the kind of dance that I want to do.
So from very early on, Matthew Bourne was taking film references and turning it into dance theatre. It was kind of a new term, right? Dance theatre was a new term back then. And Matthew Bourne was at the forefront of that. 1986, his company started, I believe. So what year were you talking about when you saw that?
So that would probably be 92, 93.
Okay. So yeah, still early days for the company as well. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, early days. It was very small scale.
And also, I don't want to assume that anyone knows anything about what you're talking about, seeing an audition in the stage, because it is, the world has changed so much. Talk about what we used to do to get jobs, the stage.
I know. I'm talking about a newspaper. A paper where the print would come off on your thumbs. God, that really was a different world, wasn't it?
It was a different world. It was an arts entertainment newspaper or performing arts newspaper. And it had all of the latest news. You knew what shows were on, what shows were going to be on. There were some articles about actors and some producers and some directors and some agents. It was the whole thing. And then in the back, there were maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 pages of auditions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the format's the same, but it's all digital obviously now. But yeah, that is what it was. And you literally like thumbed through it and used to circle
the auditions that you wanted to go on that week.
Yeah. Circle. I'll do that one. Yes, I can ride a horse. That's fine. Not really.
Yeah. Absolutely. The riding the horse is always on the CV.
Exactly. All that. But yeah, I'd fallen in love with Matt's work from that first viewing, and it was the company that I wanted to join. That's what I was sort of saying to myself. And then just turned out that when I came back from that job with Bill, Sue, this, mentor, said, you'd be great for this. Like, you should go for it. So that's exactly what I did.
Yeah. What an amazing mentor. It feels like you had some really pivotal, strong, older ladies from childhood as sort of role models and mentors through your life, whether it was Betty Stewart, whether it was the lady in the shop, and now with Sue pushing you to do what you were passionate.
Totally. All the women. There's a teacher, Teresa Kerr, as well, who was a jazz teacher, whom we absolutely loved as well. She was fierce. I'm actually the godfather to her granddaughter, which is a funny twist of the tale, but that happened later. But she was like that as well. She was so just fiercely protective of you and your artistry, and she just wanted to, and she was so inspirational. She played all this amazing music like soul and R&B and house music in the class, and she still is amazing. I spoke to her only a couple of weeks ago, actually, and she is still thriving, and she runs Bodywork College in Cambridge.
Oh, I know Bodywork well. Yeah, she's running that now.
She is, yeah, that's her college. So she's just, again, this amazing character, so inspirational, and it's just the memories of that have stayed with me forever. It's almost like I call upon them, those memories to help me now.
Yeah, and those people stay with you. They're on your shoulder, in your ear, giving you all of the positive things. And I think navigating, the entertainment industry is exactly that. It's an industry. It was very different back in the early 90s, I'm sure. But having those people, especially if you want to be a performer, you want to be on stage, you don't always necessarily know how to navigate that in an industry. And those older people that have been around for a while, pushing you in the right directions or keeping you safe, there's lots of exploitation in the industry. Let's face it, there is, and there still is today. So having those strong ladies that have your back is so important. So I'm really happy to hear that you had that.
They were incredible. They were protectors, in that kind of mother nature way. They'd have me round for dinner when I was going off track, and they went over and above, man. I could cry, actually. They really put in just this extra bit of effort with everyone, and what a difference that makes. Yeah. When you're a teenager.
Yeah. And again, it shows that closeness of the arts, really. It shows the closeness of performing artists, that it goes beyond colleagues and peers. It becomes your chosen family. And a young lad that you were away from home in London, not just navigating the industry, but navigating your life in this big, crazy city, had people that had your back.
They had my back, and it was sort of unconditional. That's what I mean about the mother. It was almost like the unconditional, they were willing for you to do well, prosper and evolve and work and just, be a dancer. It's incredible.
Oh, I love it. And so you saw this. I absolutely love it. I've gone cold thinking about it. It's wonderful. It's so wonderful. You saw this advert for the audition for Matthew Bourne's company. You saw Matthew Bourne do this sort of Hitchcock style dance theatre performance, and you went, that's where I want to be. That's the company I want to dance for. So you went along to this audition, and what happened next?
Yeah, went on to it. I think there was a few, seem to remember. I thought I had done quite well, but then again, you know, sometimes you think you've done well and you don't get the job, and then you don't think you've done well, and they're like, we love you. And you're thinking, okay, my instinct is out here because I've got no clue. But so I thought it had done well. Didn't hear anything. I was getting really nervous. And my mum actually said, just phone them. But you'll notice on that advert that's circulating the internet at the moment because they're doing their 30th anniversary, and it says strictly no telephone calls. I was like, oh God, you know, but I thought I would have heard something, even if it was a no, you know. So I thought, I'm just going to call them anyway, even though they say don't call, I'm going to call. So I called. The letter, it got lost in the post. I know. So if I hadn't called, they were like, yeah, we were wondering why you hadn't responded.
Oh my goodness. God for your mum saying, call them.
Oh, thank God. I know. Thank God for my mum. So it was quite funny, you know, how that happened. And
wow. And that's another thing as well. Letters did used to get lost in the post a lot back in the day.
They really did. But from the beginning of that show, it was just exciting, you know. There was such an excitement was in the air.
So you were one of the original cast members for Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake.
Yeah. First ever.
Wow.
First ever production, world premiere at the old Sadler's Wells, and then I lost count of how many subsequent productions I did, maybe 7, 8. It was a lot.
You did that production, you did the original production at the original Sadler's Wells. You also performed this show again and again in lots of places, and it even went to Broadway. You performed it on Broadway.
It went to Broadway, I know. Yeah, so that world premiere production, the story goes that Cameron McIntosh, who Matt had worked with before, he sort of pinned Matthew up against the wall and said, I must take this to the West End. That's the legend. I think that's probably true. Yeah, because it was almost like a workshop in a way when we first did it. And it was quite difficult, seemingly, to get funding. And I mean, people walked out. They were outraged that 2 men could dance together and that, you know, swans could be men. It was a different time. That was a different time as well.
It was a different time. It's really easy to take Matthew Bourne and what he does for granted these days because the world has changed. But back then, really did push the boundaries for many reasons because Swan Lake obviously was a classical piece of work.
Yes.
Matthew Bourne was remixing what it was and making it modern. So it was modern dance. It was contemporary dance. It wasn't ballet as such. It wasn't in that classical sense. And we saw men be swans. We saw 2 men together. This was really pushing boundaries in the early 90s.
Totally. Because you had the sort of ballotamanes on one hand saying, how dare you mess with a classic, which is silly because it's not like the ballet didn't invent the story. I mean, that story existed before it was a ballet and before it was. So it's a little bit of a, you know, it's a dead end, isn't it? That argument, but that's what they were saying.
But they're a purist.
Purist, that's right. They just didn't want it messing with, you know. And then on the other hand, the UK, the world was hideously homophobic in the mid-90s. It was really the start of, you know, the Graham Norton coming on the television and, you know, gay bars in Soho, suddenly you could see through the windows because they were blacked out up until about 92, 93. So you had all these opinions and all these kind of like learned behaviours about things like that.
I remember GAY putting the big letters on the Astoria, and that was a big thing. It was like, you know, GAY is like up there and singing loud and proud. And I think that was maybe in the early 90s as well. I remember that going like, look, it says gay up there, you know, and it's like there was this emergence of pride.
Yes, yeah, there was. I think it was when it kind of came into its own. But of course, when anything comes into its own, you get the backlash, you know, like that always happens. And that's exactly what happened. And, you know, as I say, like people didn't want to fund it. I think people thought that it was going to, like Trocadero, the drag sort of ballet. I think people thought that it was going to be that. They didn't realize that it was going to be this incredibly serious, especially the act 4, at the end of the show. It's so emotional and charged, physically charged and people they weren't ready for that. They weren't expecting that. But thankfully, the majority of people took to it and loved what was done. But there were definitely people that would, do a bit of a Stravinsky right of swing and storm out, But then, we went on tour and it did go to the West End. Cameron McIntosh did produce it in the West End.
What theatre was it at?
Oh, what theatre was it at? It was at the Piccadilly.
It was at Piccadilly. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the Piccadilly.
And how long were you involved with Swan Lake? For how many years was that your baby, if you like?
So that would have been like maybe 6 years in total. And I think I did a couple of tours, did Los Angeles as well. That was before New York.
Oh, wow.
That was amazing. That was at the Amazon Theatre. And we had, believe it or not, I actually met like Sid Charisse, Bette Midler, Debbie Red. I met Ann Miller. I've got a fabulous photo of me and Ann Miller. It was unbelievable. And also like contemporary, because there's nothing really in LA. Like, it's very limited, like theatre wise.
Yeah, it is limited, and I can't quite picture that going there and being successful. But I imagine it was the only thing of its kind in that space. So
there's very few things. Like there's a place for plays. Now there's the Disney Opera House as well. But like back then, there was really only. I think there was only the Amundsen, and then the I can't remember, Mark Taper Pavilion, I think it was called, for plays. We've got as a captive audience, and it was unbelievable, like proper MGM, legends, and George Clooney.
And George Clooney. Only Bette Midler and George Clooney.
That didn't hurt. Hi, George. Hi. Over here, George.
Love it. How old were you at this time, Colin?
So I was 20 when I joined. Is that right? 21. 20, I was probably like 25 by that point.
Oh, amazing. In your prime, living your best life, performing in this wonderful show, traveling the world, meeting all of these people, and just in your prime. Wow.
Yeah, and it was a very special time for not only for that show, but for, as I say, like dance in general, coining that phrase, dance theatre, and also for Matt, because Matt he was known in the contemporary dance circles. He wasn't well known. He became a star. He became, Matthew Bourne that we know and love today. But that was when all that happened. So it's so exciting to see that happen for someone as well. And, just to be kind of caught up in the whirlwind of it all. That's how it felt.
The Olivier's, the Tonys, all of the nominations that came after that. The commercial success, I guess, like you said, people felt like it might have stayed on the fringes. This would be a fringe.
Totally.
This was commercially successful across the globe.
Yeah. It became the longest running dance show of all time.
Yeah. Wow.
Like anywhere.
And you were part of the birth of that. It's amazing, really. Amazing.
I know. That little show that we did for a fortnight at the Cyber Wells. Because that's all it was. The contract was for 2 weeks, a 2-week run. It's a 2-week run, guys. Give it your all, make the most of it. That's kind of how it felt. I had no idea. I had no concept of anything then. I was just like doing this show, working with Matthew Bourne, but I didn't really, there was no analysing, but I don't think anyone could have predicted the degree of the success. It was unbelievable.
Which is why I love this, looking back now and thinking about it, who knew? Well, you were just riding the wave at the time, but who knew? And Matthew Bourne as a company now. Were you involved in any of Matthew's other shows, or was it just Swan Lake?
I worked on Highland Fling, and I worked on Cinderella, the original cast of Cinderella as well. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And Cinderella's still being performed today, again, really one of these.
Yes, it's amazing. That's another amazing. Highland Fling's amazing. His work's it's generally just great, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's really accessible. What I love about Matthew Bourne is that he makes dance accessible by the films or the stories that he tells on stage. Yeah. And what I found with what he does is that somebody that would never sit in a theatre to watch a dance show will go because they connect with the story, whether it's Carmen, whether it's Edward Scissorhands, whether it's Cinderella, whether it's Swan Lake. It draws an audience. And then when you get bums on seats like that, the power of dance theatre and what he does choreographically, creatively comes to power. And someone might leave saying, I'm now a dance fan. That's the power of Bourne.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think that's what he's done, you know, and also that allows him a little bit of license to do like the Midnight Jar and the Dorian Grays, you know, slightly sort of darker, slightly.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? I think he's created such a brilliant position for himself, and I think everyone's benefited from it, you know, in that audience and dancers alike.
Are you loving the episode? I certainly am. And I think you can probably tell I'm definitely a Colin Ross Waterson fan. If you are loving this episode or any of our other episodes, please don't forget to give us a star rating. Please like, subscribe and share to your friends and give us a star rating. It just helps us carry on doing what we're doing. Enjoy the rest of the episode. I'll see you very soon. You can tell me whether this is true because I don't know, but it feels like, you know, once you're part of that company, they really nurture you. And even if you do move on to other things, there is a home that is created there. That is the sense that I get. Did you feel that as well?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm still friends with Matt and his husband, Arthur, or his partner, Arthur. Very much in touch with them. And both of them actually been very, very nurturing to me over the years. When I first sort of made the move away from dance, I was still dancing, but I was sort of started to write some songs and all that. And, you know, Matt and Arthur were amongst the first people that I would send demos out to. And I would, you know, listen to their advice and the feedback that came to all my early shows when I became a singer and doing the clubs with my early songwriting and all that. So, yeah, I would say so. I think Matt, you know, and Etta, his associate, like they like the family and they liked Etta came to see the workshop with a second chance. And May, for example, gave me some really great notes, me and Ben, some really great notes. So, yeah, that definitely does exist. Because I think we all, you know, we want to support one another. And we're willing each other to do well in our future sort of paths.
There is a competitive nature and it's a competitive world. But what people don't understand unless you're in it is that there is a massive camaraderie in this industry.
Yeah.
Even though your peer who you're standing next to that you might be walking into an audition with that is your competition.
Yeah.
If they get the job over you, there is still a feeling of pride. You're my friend and we want each other to succeed. And I think there is a camaraderie in the arts like no other. And I love that.
Yeah, I love that as well. No, it's a thing.
And so what happened post Matthew Bourne in your career then?
Well, I was doing quite a lot of opera work in between contracts with Matt. And I continued doing that. Once I had done Broadway, I mainly did operas and I did work with Bunty Matthias that I told you about. That was kind of site-specific things and just sort of interest in one-off projects, which is really cool. Did a big production of The Fairy Queen at the English National Opera and the Troyen at La Scala and, you know, toured France and these kind of, you know, those early music operas like Seraglio and things like that, like really, I mean, just totally different. And worked with Les Arts Florissant, the Baroque early music group, doing these operas. So just, yeah, different to Matthew, much more low key, I would say. Different kinds of theatres, there's more opera houses, obviously, for things like that. And the tours were different. It was more sort of, it was provincial in one hand, but it was really glamorous on the other. You were really well looked after. And of course, Dean, the sopranos, they don't like to sing more than twice a week, so you get paid really well, but you only have to do 2 shows. Maybe 3.
I'm just resting my voice now.
I'm resting. You know, they'd come in and they'd have the towel, the scarf around their feet. Don't speak to me. Don't come near me, you know.
Yes, I'm a vocal rest for 48 hours. Shush.
Exactly. a different kind of thing, but really, really good fun and really interesting, and music that I love, and a good sort of segue, I would say.
I was going to say, now there is a little bit of going back into the classical part of music, and through all of your dance career, did you continue to play the violin and the piano?
I didn't practice, but, whenever there was one sort of lying around, just have a go to see if I could still do it, kind of thing. But no, I didn't practice. I did totally focus on dance. But I always harbored the desire to return to music. In fact, when I went to London Studio Centre at 16, I really wanted to go to London Studio Centre for 2 years and then come back to the RACMD, as it was then, and do full-time music up here, because I'd done the junior programme at RACMD, now the Royal Conservatoire, but you had to be 18 to do those courses. But of course, as life took over, I decided that actually dance was going to be the thing, at least for a while.
So this was the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland?
Yeah.
And you'd already done the junior programme there, and it was kind of in your periphery. I might go back and do the full course.
Yeah, might go back to do that. I might go back to do the full course, or there was just something. There was always something in the back that good music, like almost like, like a bell was ringing.
And that's really difficult to stop the ball rolling when your dance career is going so well. It's almost like, well, let's just ride this until it's time not to, I guess, because you were being really successful. You were getting this work, you were getting the jobs. It was snowballing. So to stop that would have seemed counterintuitive, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I ended up doing it. I had a 20-year career, if you count the Death in Venice, in Scottish Opera, because that was like 13 and ended when I was sort of 33. I still taught dance after that, so I was still sort of involved in it, and eventually I ended up contributing to the performing arts qualifications for dance as well. That was that was my swan song, like that was the end of it.
Okay, so this is interesting, because I was going to ask, like most dancers or most performers, performing isn't just everything that we do. We also teach, and we get involved in education, and we get involved in the industry as a whole. So you were doing that. Talk a little bit about that to me, what you were up to with the education side.
Yeah, definitely. I always taught. In fact, the first sort of opportunity to teach was Teresa Kerr, who I mentioned, in Bodywork. She saw something in me that she felt could be a teacher, that could be a guide, that could be some kind of mentor or something like that. She saw that in me. I mean, I'm talking about I was like 19 or something. I didn't even know what a mentor was. What does that mean? And so she used to let me teach some segments of the class. I said, right, Colin, take it from here, kind of thing. And when I came back from New York, actually, she took me on the faculty at Bodywork, and so there was always that connection. And also Matthew Bourne saw something in me as well, because when I did that first tour of Swan Lake, it's not like it is now, but there was an outreach program, as it was called in those days. And he was like, Colin, I think you'd be really good at that. Do you want to go and teach kids in the, in the sort of the boroughs, in schools and stuff like that? So I would go and I would teach the material, do Swan Lake, Highland Fling, workshops up and down the country. And so I kind of always had that bug, and it was instilled in me by those same people.
Those people that you mentioned, you look at those as mentors, as leaders, as positive influences, and of course you absorb that nature.
Totally. And they saw something in me that, as I say, I literally didn't even really know what that meant, but they saw it in me, and they were able to kind of encourage me in that direction.
And there is an adult somewhere, hopefully even listening to this, going, I remember being a kid and Colin came into our school and taught us a bit of Swan Lake, and that could have changed their lives. Wonderful thing about these outreach programs that still happen today, but I think they are framed a little bit differently. And
they are. It's more organized, I think is probably the word.
But I love that. I love that you took to that, and that you saw some of your mentors in yourself and gave that back as well.
Yeah, it gave me a start to kind of try and nurture that, and sort of, just grow that side of me. I've taught for as long as I've performed, probably. I don't now, but up until before lockdown, I was still teaching music as well, and business. And I always was, the mentor for any course that I was on. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Something that you didn't even know what it was that you end up being.
Yeah, I think this is a really normal and natural thing for a lot of performers to do. I don't think everyone's got it in their instinct. Don't get me wrong. I know a lot of performers that don't teach, but I do know I had that in me, certainly. I was teaching the whole time I was performing. And even after I stopped performing and stopped being a dancer and saying like, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to travel. I can't be bothered with the performance of it. I still choreograph and to teach and to mentor people. And I think that is, so there wasn't a sort of welcoming back to opera and classical music through the end of your dance career. And you said you stopped performing at around 32, 33. Is that right?
I stopped dancing full time at that point, but I then started writing music.
Definite switch to music at that time.
Yeah, in my heart, I was like, it's time. It's time to do this other thing that's been, I don't even really know what it is, but it's calling me and I'm going to go there.
How was your transition from being a dancer or identifying as a dancer to exploring this musician side of yourself and wanting to compose music? How was that transition? Was it difficult? Was it easy? Did you just sort of snap and go, right, now I'm going to do this?
I think I did, and I think I still felt like a dancer in many ways, especially because I was teaching. I mean, I kind of still feel like a dancer now. You probably do as well. It is just weird, isn't it?
Yeah, once a dancer, always a dancer.
Yeah, always part of your identity, I think. I still, there's something, I can't really explain it, but I do still kind of feel like a dancer.
And what does it mean to feel like a dancer? How do we put that into words? How are you taking that through your life?
I think a lot of it has to do with the expression and the connection to, just that innate connection to creativity. And I think that the reason that it stays with you and that you can still feel like a dancer as your identity, even when you're a musician, is because there's no words. It's just your body, and it's your whole body, and it's your mind, and it's your heart, and it's your soul. And it's all these things that make us human. And you're just using that when you're a dancer. And I think that, and I suppose you could say that that would be the same as being a musician as well. It's just that you're feeling these emotions and you're able to connect like that. So maybe it's all one and the same. But I think the reason that I say that I still feel like a dancer is because being a dancer that was my main, professional adult full-time, I'm earning money, I'm a dancer. I was never doing that with music. I was training in music as a child up until the age of 16. Yeah, I did Scottish opera. Yes, I did some commercial work. I was getting paid for that. But, that Bill Deemer contract was my first, that was I'm a full-time dancer. So I think maybe that's got something to do with it as well.
I think you said it beautifully because this episode is called I Used to Be a Dancer, and used to be's do count, which is the podcast. You are still a dancer, and we all who have danced are still dancers.
Totally.
I struggled a little bit when I stopped dancing professionally, or when I made the decision I'm not going to perform anymore, and I really don't care about having an agent or going through these auditions anymore. It's not what I want to do. My priorities changed, so I'm no longer a dancer. I used to be a dancer, but I'm not anymore because it's not my job. I'm not earning money from it. But does that mean you're less of a dancer? Maybe, if you're not practicing, if you're not training every day like you used to be, if you're not chasing the jobs like you used to be. But there's an identity that dance gives you. And I think you just said it really beautifully. It is about the connection of mind, heart, soul, and the expression of ourselves through movement, through body, an understanding of our bodies in space and the world around us and how we see the world. That never goes away.
I know what you mean. And I think what you're saying is probably true of me as well. I think at the time I was like, no, I'm not a dancer anymore. I'm a singer. This is what I'm doing. I'm not doing that anymore. But I think it was probably a wee bit later that I was like, oh, actually, I do still feel like a dancer. I'm somehow still thinking choreographically. And again, I don't really know what that means, but I just am. Like, it's all about the movement, and it's a strange thing. But I think it's a form of it. There is a continuum. And I think that we're all kind of multifaceted in a way, even if we don't realize it, With dance, I feel like that was probably the happy ending to it all in a way, because that was like the other side of the academic fence, and it was quite nice in a way because it was kind of like, okay. I do still feel like a dancer. I'm still very interested in dance. There's always dance element in the musicals and stuff like that. I've got a close eye on it. But I think in terms of it being part of the career explicitly, it's probably over with the writing of those qualifications, if that makes any sense.
It does, and it's a beautiful ending, actually. I think it's quite lucky to have that because there's a definite transition where dance doesn't completely stop and leave your life.
Yeah.
It just moves into another orbit almost where the performance is not there, but you are still very much involved.
Exactly. I like to think of it as a soft bookend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's nice.
It's there. I mean, you can move it if you want, but it might just be the bookend.
That's nice. I like that. And that freed you up and gave you a lot more time to explore your composition and making music and your language around that. So how did that happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always been, I was immersed in club culture, as I told you, really interested in house music culture and club culture as a kind of a pacifying and transformative agent in the world. Because I really do. I think the dance floor certainly used to be more than just going to listen to records and getting laid.
Just say that again. A pacifying and transformative.
I always felt that.
Oh, yes. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone describe the club culture and the club scene like that. And it is so true. It's beautiful.
Just to think about it, all those energies coming together for that one moment in time, all love, and it's the music. And if you get a really good club with a really great DJ, and that's the job of the DJ, or certainly, again, used to be for sure, was that they tuned into the energy of the dance floor. And it was about this whole communication without saying anything, just through those records that are being played. So I was a bit of a fixture on the club scene, I would say. I was kind of like one of those people that went out so much that people said, do you work here? Or do you not work here? Well, then you should work here. Do you know what I mean? I was like, yeah, people used to say to me, I'm on the guest list. I was like, I don't work here. I'm a dancer.
Give me some names of some of the clubs.
Well, I had my own room at Trade for a while.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Lawrence will tell you, Lawrence who runs Trade, he wanted to do this big cabaret thing. I mean, it was love it or loathe it, particularly for the Trade cabaret. Some people used to come in and go, what the hell is this? And other people loved it. I did it 4 or 5 times. I had my own room in Trade. It was like the big, Pride and Christmas and New Year, things like that. So I did that. That was great. I co-ran a club called Drama with Terry Hart. That ran for quite a few years. That was really successful. And I just used to I mainly was a host. So I sometimes did the door, but I was mainly a host. And that would be just bringing people down and, hanging out. And then I got into performing, doing that. Hence, gingerly starting to write lyrics and performing the electronic music.
So you started to write lyrics for dance music, electronic music?
Yeah, I used to do live vocals actually over the sets of DJs. I started with Smoke and Joe. I used to sing, just do ad-lib, whatever came to mind, depending on the track. And that kind of made me think, oh, okay. I was inspired by Kevin Aviance and people like that in New York. And then that kind of just got distilled into more regular songwriting. And I made 3 albums as a singer-songwriter, but it was all electronic ambient music with a bit of a nod to club culture, but it became more and more traditionally structured songs.
So they really worked in the live space as well, and they worked in the club capacity, but it was more laid back, ambient, and more what we would consider, I guess, from a traditional pop song, the structure of that, with a hook, with a chorus, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Especially the final album that I did. That was probably the most traditionally structured album in terms of the songwriting. And they were kind of purposefully abstract. That was the world that I felt that called to explore at that moment in time. And then as I was getting older and wanting to perform less and less, and then I don't perform at all now and I have no desire to, and that was just sort of before all the lockdowns happened, that kind of year before then, and I'd moved back home to Glasgow. I'd left London, and that was when I took my mind to writing musical theatre.
Right. Wonderful. What I love is that there was it feels like a real natural evolution through that, a real natural transition, that you weren't trying to do something different or outside of your wheelhouse. You were just using all of your own experiences, the environments that you were in, and you were putting that into your art. We as dancers learn to listen to music in a completely different way that only dancers understand anyway. So this must have really informed your music at that time as well, right?
Totally. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Myself and the book writer, Ben Hartley, who was a Swan as well. That's where we met in the West End production of Swan Lake. We had always wanted to write a musical. We always were planning to do it, but you know what it's like. The time and the collaboration and the energy and the money and the everything, even the simplest of musicals, it takes a village, a town, a world, So we'd kind of dabbled and we'd kind of, experimented, but we hadn't really ever felt that we had that time to sit and do it. Of course, the first lockdown, he was in self-employment furlough. I was in self-employment furlough. He was in New York. I was in Glasgow. I was like, look, if we don't write the musical now, we're never going to write, because when are we ever going to have this time to do it? And that's how it came about.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful that you saw that as an opportunity. So Ben Hartley has written the book for 2 of these musicals that we're going to talk about. And so you took that time in lockdown to connect, and he wrote the book. You were writing the lyrics and composing the songs. You were doing all of that.
And composing the music as well, yeah.
Yeah, all of that. How was that process? Was this happening simultaneously? Were you passing each other bits of work?
Yeah, sometimes simultaneously, sometimes, sat on FaceTime. Other times it's like, okay, what's the scene? What's the character? What is it we're trying to say here? Do we need a song here? Is that the right song? That's the approach that we took. We really got the bones of the story, which is loosely based on elements of my life anyway.
Okay. First of all, what's the title of the musical for people that don't know?
This is A Second Chance.
A Second Chance. Book by Ben Hartley. Music and lyrics by yourself. Written mainly in lockdown. What is it about? Give us a flavour of the story and what it's all about.
It's about love. It's about love in all its crazy myriad forms, really, from self-love to ugly love to
the romantic love to platonic love.
All that love of a career, but also how that can challenge you and turn against you. It can go into some dark places, but it's ultimately a very uplifting tale of the journey towards self-acceptance. I would say that is ultimately what the show is about. And it's based on some little vignettes from my experience in the music industry and, some things that have happened to me or the protagonist, and we've flipped it around, and Ben has done a really good job in taking my little tales and my little vignettes and really, writing this amazing in-depth story and creating very rich characters.
So you're seeing yourself in this musical. So as well as writing the lyrics and the music, you are so in this musical. Where is it in its stage of production?
We are at the stage where we've done 2 readings and 3 workshops. The last workshop was at the Union Theatre in London in May, which we did a recording of, which we then sent out to our existing partners and people that we've worked with, like ETA, for example.
It's so difficult. You put it beautifully when you said it takes a village. It's so expensive. It needs backing. It needs, producers. It needs money. It needs to be out there, and it takes time. But it feels like you're in a really good stage. 2 readings, 1 workshop already, getting the right bums on seats and getting the word out there. I had to listen to a couple of the songs. This feeling, oh my God, this feeling is just the most beautiful. It takes you on a journey. It's everything that musical theatre is for me, or should be for me. But it's composed so beautifully. There's so much stuff going on in the background. And whoever sings that, I don't know who it is, but her vocals are...
That is Alicia Corrales.
Alicia Corrales. Beautiful voice. The composition is just amazing, Colin. I'm not just saying.
Oh, thank you.
It is so stunning. All of the songs I enjoyed, but this one in particular stood out for me. It moved me, and it was everything musical theatre to be.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad. I'm really, really glad. I connect with that song very deeply, and I can't imagine anyone singing it like Alicia sings it. They are such a talent. Very wide range, but very usable. Like every note in that range is either full or soft, depending on how they choose to use their instrument. And they're young. They've got command over it in a way that is very mature, I would say. They also did the Citizens, a couple of weeks at the Citizens Rooms last year in Glasgow. So they've grown with the show. Most of the cast we've had since the beginning. Yeah, I'm really glad that resonates with you. That's great.
It did. It really, really did. Any audience members that are listening to this podcast now, keep your ears to the ground, people. A Second Chance, hopefully will be able to be viewed somewhere very soon. I'm imagining probably start in Glasgow. It should start in Glasgow, but I hope we can see it across the UK at some point. It does take a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of people.
It does.
Is there anything else that you want to mention that we can get excited about for you, with you, that's in the pipeline or that you're doing at the moment? Anything at all?
Well, I've written a song cycle, which is very much in a classical crossover genre. It's still very theatrical, don't get me wrong, but I feel like I'm really using my classical chops the most on Two Susans. Yeah, it's like a 12, 13 song cycle for a piano, a cello, a violin, and 2 female singers. It's a story about othering, people being othered and othering others. And it's about this whole like family connection. They don't realize they're sisters basically until their mother dies and leaves them a letter. And then they exchange these letters through song. And it's about sort of forced adoption in the 50s and in Scotland. And it's about just how siblings turn out to be so different from one another. And it's about the othering that happens within that whole space of those topics.
Where do you find your ideas from, Colin?
Well, sadly, my mum was forced to give up my elder sister when she was a teenager. She came into our lives about 14 years ago. Sadly, she has since passed away. So, and my biological sister, my full biological sister, whom I grew up with, also passed away. They were both called Susan because where my older sister was given up for adoption, she was named Susan. Can you believe it?
Wow.
And then when she came back into our lives, I had 2 sisters called Susan.
Oh my God.
So that's where the 2 Susans comes from. So there's a little bit of elements of my own life, really, and then I'm bending things and twisting things to make a new narrative.
To make a new narrative and to push the creative output, I guess, of your own life. So really and truly what I've heard is that most of your art or all of your art is coming from your own experiences.
Yeah. So far.
I mean, how do you feel being a dancer for so long as a job? And like you said, not really ever stopping to identify as a dancer, but now you are a musician, you're a composer, you're a lyricist, you're a vocalist. That is your job. How does being a dancer inform that? How does one inform the other, would you say? Can we put that into words? It's a big question, really.
It is a big question, but it's a good one. I'll try. I think it's myriad in its response, if that makes sense. I think training has a lot to do with it. So I think dance training sets you up for life. The discipline, the timekeeping, the camaraderie, like you talked about, just that you've got to show up. You can't not show up. You've got to show up and you've got to be in it. And it's very non-analytical in a way because of there's so much feeling involved in it. You're very much in the moment as a dancer and you're very much in the moment as a musician. You know, it's like time just sort of stops or dissolves or collapses or something like that. If you've done it, if you've trained even for a term as a dancer, you never forget that those are the components necessary to be a dancer, that, you know, all that system just exists because there's no other way to do it. So I just always have that in my head, in my mind. You know, I'm thinking I'm very, you know, even though I work from home mainly, you know, I've got my little routine. I do my scales, I do my arpeggios. I'm in it. I'm doing it. Everything is kind of like I'm still rehearsing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's a way of life, isn't it? That's why, you know, I said once a dancer, always a dancer. And it's a bit cliche, but it's so true because...
I know, but it's true.
It's true, isn't it? Because of everything that you just said, what the discipline, the training, what happens to all of that training when you're no longer a dancer? Where does it go? It goes with you through your life. It teaches you lessons about how to be in the world.
It does.
And you take that into other parts of your life. There's so many transferable skills.
Oh my God. Yeah, totally. There's actually really like 2 of my best friends, Phil and Tristan, have both gone into, well, Tristan's like into TV production and Phil is more sort of like large scale, you know, events and stuff like that. And they say all the time, see the skills from being a performer, being a dancer that you can transfer. I didn't know I had all these skills, but it turns out actually, you know, you can use them in all these different walks of life and all these different careers. Isn't that just amazing?
Parents out there, get your kids into dance class. This is the best thing you're going to ever do for their lives. Get them into dance class.
Absolutely. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. You don't have to go on the stage, don't have to do it professionally, but as a thing to do, it sets you up for life in all these fantastic ways that you don't even realize at the time when you're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love how successful you've been as a composer and all of the things that are in the pipeline. And I love that dance is kind of still there with you, that thought, that feeling, that way of being, that identity. I find the same for me. So it's been so beautiful talking to you about that.
Likewise.
That. Thank you so much for your honesty and for talking about your life and your journey. It's been so interesting. It's been so rich and fulfilled, and you've had some incredible moments in your career. And I think there are more to come, Colin. I hope that there are more to come. We'll be watching with anticipation for these musicals to hit the West End. Oh, I think it's pretty plain to tell that I loved that conversation. As I said before, I am an unapologetically Colin Ross Waterson fan. His music is incredible. The musicals that he's composed and written lyrics for are amazing. I haven't read the book, but I would still love to see both of them in the West End. Please keep an eye out. If you want to know anything about Colin, the link to his website is in the show notes. Everything can be found there. He's got all of his previous works and credits, as well as the musicals that he's working on. I just found all of his life so interesting. I think this episode, more than any other episode, was more conversational. I don't know what you felt as a listener, but generally I'm just a vessel. I find myself identifying as a boat or a ship, and the captain of that ship is always the person that I'm interviewing. It was the same case with Colin, but because he was speaking about dance, because he was talking about the dance industry, being a dancer, I just related so much more on a deeper level. And so rather than feeling like an interviewer, I just felt like I was having a conversation, and I was just relating and identifying so much with what he was saying. The big thing that I'm going to take away from this episode, which I knew already, but I just hope that you guys can take this away as well, is the role models and the mentorship. Dance is no joke. Performing arts is no joke. It's an industry, it's an art form, and it can even be identified as a sport. We are refined, trained, and conditioned from a young age, just as good as the best sports people that you see on TV today. We dedicate our lives to it. But even though we might not be on stage 24/7, even though we might not be in work 24/7, we are dedicated to the industry, to the art form, to the camaraderie, to the training, to the teaching, to the mentorship, to the professional and personal development. We try to be role models. We try to be mentors. There is that in the industry. Colin spoke about it so beautifully with such strong women in his life that was really inspiring, and I felt in my life as well in my career. Plus he carried that forward. He paid it forward through his own mentorship, through his own education. He wrote some of the modules that people are taking today in dance colleges. You know, how fantastic is that? How amazing is that? Being a dancer is not about being on stage and performing. Being a dancer is a way of life. And I am so utterly grateful for Colin for sharing his story. I'm so passionate about this industry. I'm so passionate about being a dancer. It's such a huge part of my life. I hope that you could hear that through the episode. And I just want to say, go and follow Colin. Follow everything that he's doing, because he's doing amazing things. And I hope that this episode turns all of you into fans of his music. He's an incredible guy. Thank you, Colin. Thank you for being with me and for sharing your story so honestly. Have you liked, subscribed, or shared this podcast? If you have, thank you so much. I'm sending you lots of love and kisses and hugs. If you haven't, well, I still love you, but please just go and do that now. Will you? Will you share the podcast? Will you like the podcast? Will you give it to somebody that you love and let them know what's going on? Also, will you give us a star rating? It helps us continue doing what we're doing. I really appreciate you as a listener continuing to dive into all of my episodes and follow me on my journey. Please share the love, share the podcast. I will see you very soon on another episode. Stay safe. Lots of love. I'll see you soon.